Since the dawn of time, mankind has disliked bad video games and praised really great ones. But one thing remains, the mid games. Where does the game we're tackling today stand on that scale? Which way will that fist fly toward? Limbless warriors unite! That's right, today we're tackling the game that just makes you
ready for action.
Released in 2003, this is the follow-up to one of my favorite games of all time, Rayman 2. Rayman 3 largely follows the trajectory and gameplay of 2, but includes some changes, for better or worse, to the formula, to give us what I would say a decent sequel to a phenomenal game. This marks the first game that Rayman creator Michel Ancel, I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that right, it's a fancy sounding name, wouldn't be heavily involved in as he was working on another project at the time, but we'll save that for another day. That being said, this game does do a pretty good job of capturing the characters and charm that makes Rayman, well, Rayman. Well, let's get into it. This is analyzing everything about Rayman 3 Hoodlum Havoc. We start with probably the best region select screen I've ever seen. It's a clothesline of underpants, with America front and center, as it should be. I bet this changes based on where you purchase the game, but I don't know. Call me Captain Underpants because I find this really funny and I love it. Warning! Warning! High level banger inbound, immediately following this. This is an intro track I haven't heard the likes of since Buck Bumble. I mean, if this doesn't get you hyped, you have no soul. You're probably the type of person to throw penguins off mountains. For the longest time, I thought the lyrics were my dog, my dog, my dog, but apparently it's matter. I like my dog better. Do you hear it? Followed this up with the main menu that's really underwhelming by comparison, but I guess it serves its purpose. Into the game, we're introduced to the plot. So, a black lum invades and converts a ton of red lums into other black lums. It's revealed later that you get black lums by scaring a red lum. They fuse into a weird oogie boogie looking creature with a big gun and chase Murphy, our friendly guide, who flies straight to Rayman to be protected. Long story short, the leader of the black lums, Andre, gets swallowed by Globox. Remember how Globox carried silver lums in Rayman 2? He must have some weird internals to be able to hold lums and their energy. But that's a video for another day. So now Rayman and Globox have to go on an adventure to get Andre out of Globox's belly as hoodlums are chasing them to and fro so they can release him and rule the world. This takes you to some wild worlds and you meet some funny teensy doctors. Until you eventually get him out and defeat the black lums, turning them back into red lums by making them laugh. Yep. And that is the plot of Rayman 3. Let's brush up on gameplay here because I have some things to say. Rayman 2's gameplay was incredible. Although I will say going back to the formula nowadays, locking onto an enemy and mashing B can feel dated. Rayman 3 keeps a lot of the similar mechanics but remedies this by adding the ability to curve your throws left or right. Putting enemies in things like shields and such, forcing you to throw your fist around them. I really like this mechanic as it adds variety and brings somewhat repetitive gameplay of 2 into a more modern setting. However, I do feel Rayman 3 utilizes this way too much. You'll have waves of enemies you just can't hit straight on, which gets annoying, especially in tight spaces, and puzzles that require you to hit specific switches by curving your fist, although the puzzles work better, I think, than the combat. Not to mention, although you're gifted the charge your throw ability from the start, you'll have lots of things that force you to charge your fist to break. Specifically, these piggy banks. It's very annoying. I just felt like it was utilized way too much, and it could have been scaled back. In addition to these combat changes, we have the introduction of power-ups. They come in the form of these cans, apparently called laser washing powders or laser detergent powders, depending on where you are, and these change Rayman's outward appearance and clothes into tools he can utilize to traverse and defeat enemies. They come in green, which makes Rayman an airbender to knock enemies on stilts down and twist platforms. Red, which gives him larger metal fists that are strong and can break stuff. It's like a charge shot without charging the shot, and maybe even a little bit stronger than that. Blue, my personal favorite, gives you these chain grapple hook hands, and you can zap enemies by tapping B furiously. Orange, which gives you a remote-controlled rocket you can launch and hit targets, pretty much used for opening doors and hitting switches. And finally, the yellow can that gives you a propeller on your head to fly up. Now, what I like about all of these are they're unique and fun to use, although I question why Rayman needs them, because in Rayman 2, if he gets a silver lum, he can fly with just his hair. He has the strength to break down things with his charge shot. He can create chains of energy to swing from purple lums. I don't know, it just seems like they rinsed and repeated abilities Rayman already had and repackaged them into power-ups he needs to find to be able to use them. I don't like that aspect. And not to mention, this game almost treats snagging these power-ups like a beat-em-up. You have to defeat all the enemies in an area or a specific enemy to get them to drop it so you can progress. I just think it's limiting, and to be honest, a lot of the times you use the power-ups, they're just situational. They artificially create uses for them rather than giving you the freedom to be creative. I don't hate them, but it just feels like they miss the mark in a bunch of ways with them. They do look cool though, at the very least. And it's all about the look. They also make a change in this game I really dislike. Some people may not pick up on it, but I definitely did, and it's the first thing I noticed, especially coming off the heels of Rayman 2 recently. They removed momentum from your movement. This is something I loved about Rayman 2, sliding down a pathway and jumping out of it to go flying, only to land and roll, moving quickly. Rayman, when he jumps in this game, feels like he almost hits a stop to jump at a specific rate, giving him a sluggish feel and making platforming feel slow. Same with his copter, it just feels significantly slower than Rayman 2, as well as swinging. Although you do have a good amount of control, so I could give a pass on the swinging. And sliding? Not really a thing. I slid like one time in this game, and it was totally on accident, and it was really underwhelming. Not like Rayman 2, where it was completely intentional. It just feels like for the 1 or 2 steps forward they took with the base gameplay, they took 4 steps back to make it feel just a little bit inferior to Rayman 2. It could have been better with some refinement. I can see how it would have been, but it's just not quite there. That's not to say it's bad, it works, it's just, you feel and see how it could have been nearly perfect. Except for one thing that really was ticking me off. How was picking up and throwing stuff so much better in 2 and 3? I struggled over and over just to get Rayman to pick up plums, which the game often has you do at several points. It's not experience breaking, but I definitely had a level of frustration I never experienced in 2. Let's move into level design. The overall aesthetic of a lot of these worlds is really well done. It feels like Rayman. You'll be running through forests, exploring an underworld-like place with everyone's favorite ghost chickens. The models and animations blend into the environment to make them have such an alive or unalive feel. Whoever decided you can hit these little turtle things was a genius. It's addictive, and the fact that they're like, oh, when you smack them, it's just incredible. But I don't support animal abuse, so I can't promote it, so disregard. Pretty much every aspect of the look of these levels is amazing. Now, as far as the design of obstacles, platforms, and puzzles, this honestly left me hanging sometimes. A lot of it was beat 'em up and then progress aspect, but I honestly think the superficial power-ups to open doors and do things really held me back. I found myself not being able to explore and be as creative as I want to. Probably the best way to put it is limiting. They aren't all bad, sometimes it does things really well. It's just those times you reach a doorway and you know you have to find that one enemy to defeat and snag the power-up so you can break down that door. Not to mention the times where you have to flee from rising lava or water or whatever it is. The slow no momentum thing I mentioned earlier really makes these parts painfully slow. Oh, and speaking of water, the swimming portion of this game, no freaking way. In Rayman 2, you could explore underwater and swim freely. In this, you're basically on a set path with only the option to move on a very limited plane. I will say I did enjoy how Rayman uses his copter to swim, but I was just bamboozled by how I was limited again. Not to mention it culminates in a boss fight, and it's kinda sloppy. In fact, most worlds culminate in a boss fight. I would say there are a few unique and fun ones to tackle, and then there are stupid ones. The big robot legs being one of them. They just drag on, and to be blunt, aren't always super fun. I like the concept and look of a lot of them, but just for the most part, they fall flat. I've got to give a shout out now to my favorite level, which, if you couldn't tell, was the spooky one with the desert of Kinaran, I think? I'm saying that right? I can't remember. Exploring the caves and simultaneously having enemies you can't defeat was awesome. It gives you a healthy fear like you turn a corner and you need to run. I really enjoyed that. Plus, you meet Reflux, who teams up with Andre to try and defeat you because you embarrassed him by beating him in the challenge. He was like their great warrior, and since you're Rayman, you're basically unstoppable, so I don't know what he was expecting there. It all culminates in their god bestowing upon you a new power, which has the ability to make a funny face. It makes the black lumps laugh and converts them into red ones for health. This is classic Rayman, and I love it. I want to point out my least favorite levels now that I pointed out my favorite, and that being the in-between levels where you're going through the dimensional portals to reach new worlds. You get this minigame where you're riding a rocket down yellow pathways jumping between them. It's not inherently bad, but it's just not good, and they last forever. forever. Which, speaking of forever, another reason I get upset with the level design in general is they segment levels into small portions and end them with Rayman walking load time segments. I may sound overly negative, but really, it's like every 3 to 5 minutes you'll hit one of these. I'd rather have the world be bigger. Stop doing this to me. It's so annoying. But you know what's not annoying? Honestly, the voice acting.
Hey, we're back where we started. Looks like we get a full night's sleep after all. Hey, what's the matter, Globox?
It's Andy. I miss him.
I will say, I miss the gibberish of 2, but I think they did a pretty good job with all these characters, Globox in particular. Although one line by Murphy really made me sad.
See you in Rayman 4!
But all in all, from Andre to the teensy doctors, it hits pretty hard. And not to mention the characters in general are all well designed and unique. You believe they're all part of this silly world and feel like they have personality. I mean, the fact Andre wants plum juice and Globox is allergic, but yet he'll drink it to make Andre feel better is hilarious and adds some charm. That's what Rayman is all about. And the music! Besides the banging intro track, I found myself falling into the world's music I was playing. They all felt right. When you get so immersed you lose track of it, I feel is when you know a game soundtrack is solid. Rayman 3 knows when to hit hard and when to dial it back. It does a great job all around, and the sound design, even though I believe a lot of it is probably recycled from Rayman 2, and let's be honest, even Tonic Trouble, I can't complain. From the subtle picking up ding of the gems to the swinging noises, it feels great. The booms are boomy and the chirps are chirpy. I don't know what else to say. Finally, capping off Rayman 3, we have bonus levels that are okay. Nothing particularly amazing, just some small minigames to pass the time if you're bored. I honestly doubt anyone will feel compelled to unlock all of these, but if you do, more power to you. Rayman 3 is overall a solid adventure platformer that has all the charm and makings of a decent game, but falls flat in areas its predecessor succeeded on way less powerful hardware. When it's working, it's good, but when it's not, it's tedious and kind of repetitive. But never overall bad, you still find enjoyment. I feel like I may have liked it better if I wasn't comparing it so much to Rayman 2, but hey, when it's a sequel of a game that did it so right, it's hard not to compare it. So I'm going to give Rayman 3 7 Pop-Tarts out of 10, and they're wild berry. The purple reminds me of Rayman's torso. Well, that's all I have for you. Be sure to throw your fist at that like button, subscribe to make all lums red again, and hit that noti bell to keep Globox away from plum juice. Until next time, have a good one.
Jiggylookback!